Across epics since antiquity, fearless men and women carved their names in history, with echoes of their deeds resonating their valor for all to hear. Those who reshape the face of the earth transcend beyond their simple names, and are anointed with a moniker that captures their legacy. On one end, we have brave warriors like Charles Martel, aka Charles the Hammer, the Frankish statesman who defeated the Umayyad Caliphate at the Battle of Tours, and is widely credited with saving Christian Europe from further Muslim expansion. And Vlad the Impaler, the Prince of Wallachia, whose battlefield prowess was matched only by his ruthlessness as he executed enemies by impaling them on long pikes until they bled out or suffocated. And Suleiman the Magnificent, whose leadership of the Ottoman Empire brought about a golden age of military success, cultural flourishing, and codification of legal reforms. Their legacies, and those of many others, are deservedly enshrined by their grandiose nicknames. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have Dish Guy, formerly known as Ambitious Quail 1415, whose prophecies in the stock market will live on forever, not because they are so profound, but for another reason altogether. Let us experience the world through the eyes of Dish Guy, so that his exploits may never be forgotten. It was the summer of 2022. Our young enterprising hero was an enthusiastic novice to the stock market and had spent much of his summer evaluating the stock picks of finance influencers. Among them was one named Smart Cuts. This Smart Cuts character was also a frequent user of our beloved Wall Street bets, and his cross-posting pulled in our Ambitious Quail like a rat to cheese. Smart Cuts was a big fan of Penn National Gaming, the parent company of Barstool Sports, and recommended his followers go long. The Finfluencer called for an $8 price increase over the week from July 10th to July 14th, a bold 30% increase from its starting value around $26. Fortunately for Quailman, he was not so easily deceived by Finfluencer pumpers. He opted to perform his own DD on Penn, and determined that Smart Cuts was full of shit. After a careful evaluation of his DD posts, Quail determined that Smart Cuts was just pumping stocks to give himself exit liquidity. Our Quail's first post on our incredible sub was one that busted down the doors with a heavy dunk, calling out Smart Cuts' nonsense. But in that very same post, the Ambitious Quail admitted that he did think Penn was a good long, but that Smart Cuts' 30% gain call over the next week was a bridge too far. Instead, and this should give you a good idea about the type of character we're talking about, Quail elected to buy 80 out-of-the-money calls totaling close to $7,000, expiring in 2 weeks rather than 1 week, which is ironically pretty close to exactly what Smart Cuts recommended. Quail also sought strong portfolio diversification by purchasing calls with strikes about $4.50 apart, so as not to put all his eggs in one basket. One of his positions went in the money a tiny bit for about half a day, but you don't need me to tell you that the rest of his calls went straight down the shitter. Frustrated and disillusioned, the Quail decided that no one on the internet could be trusted. Even looking at someone else's DD could be risky, as Smart Cuts had led him down a rabbit hole of self-immolation. With a slimmer, meaner portfolio of about $3,000, our man resolved to only perform his own original DD from then on, and his DD indicated the market was surely going higher. After all, the S&P had hit a new high for the year that week, and the money printers were firing at maximum force. The future was moons and rockets, and our man aggressively warned bearish traders in back-to-back posts that they would soon eat their shorts stuffed with regret unless they flipped their game. To put his money where his beak is, our man also cracked open margin to replenish his buying power to $7,000 and went balls deep into leaps on Mattel, Robinhood, and TMC Metals Company, all of which were having stellar years, right up until the moment that Quail bought on margin, after which point all three stocks opted out of the bull market. In fact, he bought the absolute peak on TMC, and no one has bought at a higher price since, so congratulations to the Ambitious Quail. All of these trades turned against him almost immediately, each transaction pushing him further and further into Ramenistan, our avian friend turned to copium to drown his struggles. His posts on the TMC subreddit demonstrated lack of willingness to confront reality. He was simply trading like shit. Within 12 days, Quail had given up on his assortment of leaps expiring in 2024. His losses were simply too high to continue holding. Although he makes no mention of this, He almost certainly deposited more money around this time to remain solvent. On July 24th, our struggling friend decided he could trade speculative plays no longer. He liquidated what he had left and elected to take an aggressive bet against the movie theater stock cult by going full send into puts expiring that week. AMC was due to convert its preferred shares into common stock, which would massively dilute shareholders and send the stock crashing through the floor. Holding puts was the obvious choice. But before the morning sun rose in the east, a wily judge pulled out his Uno reverse card and slapped CEO Adam Aron in the face. There would be no share conversion. The dilution was canceled, blocked by a hanging judge who may have even been a shareholder himself. When the market opened, AMC did a Super Mario double jump over 75%. The news was phenomenal for bag holders, as they could now exit for about half the loss that they were carrying yesterday. But for people like Ambitious Quail, this was the worst possible outcome. As the apes went bananas on the good news, our man's puts got diced up like chop suey. Quail quickly bailed and lost 30% within hours. He briefly flipped to calls, but then bitched out when AMC started to level off, exiting the calls with no remarkable gain. Devastated, he was left with a mere shell of his previous portfolio. Frustrated once again, he closed his Robinhood app, flaccid and disheartened once more. Every play so far had fallen apart just as quickly as he entered. Following Finfluencers was unsurprisingly a failure. His own DD was also trash. Betting against the cult of apes was likewise counterproductive. What option was left for the struggling bird? But this was no time for self-pity. Redemption starts with a single step, and the time to uncuck himself was nigh. On July 25th, after crushing a six-pack of Red Bull and snorting a couple lines of Adderall, the nearly insolvent bird began wide-reaching DD, grasping for anything in which to sink his talons. Trolling the internet aimlessly was useless. He needed something different. What he needed was insider info. Quail poured through seemingly endless tweets from different corporate accounts, seeking some inkling of information that could indicate growth for the company's revenue. It was mostly piles of corporate jargon from social media managers who get paid way too much. But after extensive clicking, Quail's hours of research eventually brought him to Dish Network, a relic of the 1980s that has struggled to find growth for at least the last decade and traded for around $7.70 a share. However, our man saw convincing evidence that the stock would blast through the rings of Uranus the next day specifically. With unbelievable luck, Quail had stumbled into this opportunity on the last possible day to buy. Allegedly, Dish Network posted a job opening for, quote, help in managing a large online storefront, which is kind of a normal thing for a company to have. But Quail was certain the unspecified online storefront was Amazon, and this must be related to Dish's pending Boost Infinite plan that it had been tweeting about. Inspector Gadget put on his detective hat and dove deeper into this theory. His investigation brought him to Amazon itself, where a page 404'd, but the URL revealed that Dish would release a special deal to Amazon members the next day, with $5 off the first month's membership. Quail had no doubt that the Boost Infinite plan was about to debut. As we all know, wireless users are just champing at the bit to switch carriers, and this $5 a month coupon through Amazon Prime was bound to leave Verizon and T-Mobile cowering in fear. Like every 19-year-old Instagram dropshipping guru knows, the secret to success, in fact the only thing you need to do financially, is list something on Amazon. And the highly innovative Dish Network would be the next beneficiary of this inexhaustible stream of income. With what remained of his portfolio, Little Bird took flight with about $2,200 in shares and $1,200 in out-of-the-money calls expiring 2 days later. On the eve of the trade that was destined to bring him lavish riches, our star detailed his extensive DD on Wall Street bets. Convinced by the cut of his jib and impressive research skills, it seemed the whole of the subreddit joined him on this moon mission. The train of Wall Street bets headquartered buyers was so long that Dish shares shot up 15% within an hour. At-the-money calls were up over 140%. Likely because of the rush of degenerates aping in. For all his distrust of Finfluencers, whether he liked it or not, Our emerging quail had just pumped Dish like the best of them. Though to be fair, this was by no means a pump and dump mission. Quail was ready to see this stock take flight and was in no mood to dump. Shortly after midnight on Wednesday, Quail rode high on his influence and preached his own sermon mount. With the die cast, he predicted two possible outcomes. A, the stock would rise immediately to $12 at market open. Or B, the stock would not rise until options expire that Friday, and then would rise to $12 on Monday. Under no circumstance could he fathom the stock going below $8 ever again. For what it's worth, even VisualMod endorsed Quail's play, a certain sign of the analysis's strength. Quailman even entertained the possibility that Dish could hit $20. In that case, his position would start eclipsing 50 grand on just this one overnight trade. He counted his blessings to have found such an opportunity at the last minute and dreamed of Lambos and strippers. The following morning, as the stars aligned and degenerate traders staked out Dish Network's website for the big announcement, they were greeted with this enthralling advertisement that would surely have customers salivating. This bombastic ad was absolutely riveting to people living pre-industrial revolution. To everyone else, this simply would not do. This is the big announcement, a postpaid phone plan for Amazon Prime subscribers specifically that's still $10 a month more expensive than other discount carriers? No, I'm out. The CEO of Dish Network himself posted a tweet of a rocket ship at market open, anticipating massive gains. But as the stock started to shit itself at 9:31 a.m., he deleted it with prejudice. Shareholders were in shambles as this Amazon deal failed to live up to the hype. They abandoned ship relentlessly. The stock dropped all day with barely an uptick to speak of. By the time the market closed, Dish had lost ground and sat at $7.22. Calls were toasted. Our quail was fricasseed. He had no choice but to address the disappointed masses who followed him into this misguided trade. As the mods blessed him with the unforgettable title of Dish Guy, our man preached to his followers. He first admitted that this was likely a rug pull, but assured the degeneracy that he was a victim, not a perpetrator. And in a sure sign of detachment from the real world, our man asserted that unspecified whales and hedgies worked tirelessly against him to hold Dish down. This statement regarding unspecified ops is one that we've heard before, and is virtually a guarantee that someone just checked out from reality. The newly minted Dish Guy also admitted that, aside from a month's rent, this was all the money he had left. On the surface, Dish Guy took this L with good humor, and those who followed him into the trade likewise accepted the loss with grace, even making some dank memes to commemorate the moment. But below the facade, the situation was much worse than anyone had been led to believe. This YOLO was no mere run-of-the-mill degeneracy. This was his shot at a respite that had long eluded him. Dish Guy has cancer, and his girlfriend suffers from seizures and fried nerves in her spine, and likewise requires medical attention. If this trade had succeeded, he'd be able to pay for at least one of them. Remember, Dish Guy is American, so this may sound alien to everyone else in the first world. But in the US, if you want medical attention, you gotta pay up. If you can't, then you have to let your situation deteriorate until you're close to death before you can see a doctor for free. Or you have to be over 65, in the military, or be an illegal immigrant. It's a weird situation, and Dish Guy does not meet any of those criteria. Even in his job as an emergency medical technician, his healthcare was still not free. His cat also apparently has cancer, which makes me believe that Dish Guy is living in some asbestos-filled squalor or something. That's a lot of cancer for everybody at the same time, like an Amnesty International situation. His medication was costing him $1,000 a month, and cancer was spreading through his house. I asked if he has a GoFundMe, and it turns out he did make one about a week prior in early November. He didn't want me to share it publicly because he said it would hurt his pride, which is basically the only thing he still has. But I'm sharing it anyway, and if he's mad about that, well, he has cancer, so he's probably not going to be mad much longer. But make no mistake, Dish Guy was not done after this failed trade. Far from it. Given his bad situation, he saw no option but to find gains in the market, as he had nothing left to lose. he had to bounce back, but the road has been rocky. Dish Guy threw himself into more DD shortly after Dish's failure and evaluated a company called Yellow Company, ticker YELL, which owns trucking companies, and had already filed the paperwork to declare bankruptcy. This would normally be a bearish signal and tell the trader that the price is going down, but Dish Guy was not so convinced. His expert evaluation led him to believe that the bankruptcy announcement was false. Likewise, he believed that the company's press release that they ceased all operations on Sunday, July 31st was not accurate. He believed that if the company did indeed shut down, then insiders would surely have sold their shares prior, which I'm 99% sure would be insider trading. At worst, he thought the company would file Chapter 11 bankruptcy as opposed to Chapter 7, the former of which does not require complete asset liquidation, a great sign for shareholders. A company that ceased all operations and announced intent to declare bankruptcy in the next 24 hours. The bullish signs were everywhere. At market open on Monday, Dish Guy full ported, day trading his account balance several times over the next 2 days before cashing out. Perhaps in mercy from God, Yellow Company shares did indeed briefly pump from about $1 to over $4.50. Dish Guy would have come close to quintupling his account if he had just held, but he instead bounced in and out more than a dozen times, buying and selling like a trader who has low conviction and missing the best upward moves. I can't calculate his exact gain or loss, but a perusal through his complete trade history indicates some small gain. He's fortunate that he sold when he did, since Yell did indeed file bankruptcy and is now YELQ and trades for $1. The small gain wasn't enough. His cat was suffering from painful tumors. His girlfriend needed unspecified back surgery. He couldn't let them down. And he himself was a literal cancer patient. But he was unexpectedly banned from Reddit completely, preventing him from sharing his tantamount DD with the masses. He needed collaboration with other Redditors to get the best information so that he may continue his successful streak. This forced him to make a new account and form the subreddit Dishheads with a dedicated Discord server. Most of the people there were there to inverse him, and for good reason. His situation just became worse and worse as the relentless siege of regardation devastated his portfolio. His next prophecy was a full port once again into some penny stock called TC Biopharmaceuticals, which he entered at a reverse split adjusted price around $9 and change on August 3rd. Only to watch it drop immediately. No one has purchased at a higher price than Dish Guy since that date, and he diamond-handed until at least $5.50 before throwing in the towel. He found relief next with a breakout play on some company called Genius Group, which is some Singapore-based learning software company. Somehow, Dish Guy managed to call this one right, bringing great returns to his followers. However, he himself had so little money left that he needed another home run just to get back in the green. He believed the next home run was Novavax, a former COVID darling that once crested $300 a share, but was then trading at around $9. He expected a huge jump in share price after the FDA approved a new vaccine, and full ported once again. He ditched around $7.60, again, with his DD ultimately being nothing but a waste of time. Now in November, thoroughly cucked financially but still optimistic, Dish Guy appears to be active on Discord. I'll share his server invite in case you need an idea of whose DD to inverse. Ultimately, I expect Dish Guy to receive great fortune in the afterlife, because the Bible, Quran, Rig Veda, Tripitaka, Avesta, and Tao Te Ching, so lots of corroboration, all state that those who take continuous L's in this life will receive W's in the next life. And Dish Guy has a lot of L's to cash in. I wish him peace, and humbly ask that he accept the crown of Regards, a profound treasure of which only the most ambitious traders are worthy.
Who wants to be king?
Check out the rest of the channel to see more videos just like this one. Thank you all for watching.